Good afternoon, everybody. Hope we're doing fantastically well and have just enjoyed the long bank holiday weekend. Welcome back to the channel, where today we're going to be looking at a Game Week 35 preview, which, in my opinion, should be a really exciting game week and probably, hopefully, one of the most high scoring game weeks left in the season because we've got quite a few double game weeks in there for that part, well, some of the teams, shall we put it. Um, and it's going to be very interesting to see how we can get through it. So before we dive into it, thank you for the support so far that we've had on the channel, especially on the last video. The last video last week did pretty well as well, so I appreciate that. And just a reminder, if you're not subscribed already, because I saw from the last video a lot of people actually found the video from the search engine, from YouTube search, so that was really good. But if you're here, it's free to subscribe, so please do that as well. And then we'll dive into the video. But we're going to actually start on this screen to this week because I want to discuss the game week a bit first before we dive into the actual fixtures. So I've got this kind of matrix here. Credit to Ben Krellin on Twitter, he's really good at this kind of thing, kind of predicting the fixtures. And this is a good little graphic that shows us here, showing the game weeks left in the season. And obviously we're looking at 35 this week. So if you see all the highlighted in yellow fixtures, that's all teams that have got a good double game week this week. So, for example, Man United are going to be playing Aston Villa and Leicester. So both of those games will contribute to week 35. So all the yellow ones are confirmed, all the green ones are single game weeks, and there's a slight dial around when the Liverpool or Manchester United game will be rescheduled. So we're unsure where that will fall. It's more likely to fall in 35 at the minute. So we could have a situation. Well, it'll actually fall into 36 and move Liverpool's fixture into 35, so they would play West Brom instead. So it's very important. Like time we're recording now, we're recording on Tuesday the 4th. So keep an eye on this for your Liverpool and Man United assets because we're not going to get confirmation now of what's happening with that fixture, and it will probably greatly impact what you're going to do between 35 and 36. So you need to keep an eye on that announcement of when that fixture will be. As you can see on there, it gives Liverpool you couldn't get much better fixtures than that really. Southampton and West Brom, pretty good fixtures. But it could just be where they're playing Southampton in the game week, so you need to keep an eye out for that. And as we go through talking about the teams and the players, we need to just factor that into our end decision. So making this transfer this week, I'd definitely be keeping it to the last day. I wouldn't be doing any transfers in advance, especially to try and maximise the potential in this game week because it could be quite important. So another factor I just wanted to mention about double game weeks is, as you can see, if you look at game week 36 after it, you've got the benefit of some teams doubling, but then they actually blank the week after. So unless you're on like a free hit, there's not a great deal of benefit of bringing in some of those assets. For example, a Chelsea, they've got really hard fixtures anyway, and you don't really want to be bringing them in at all for those fixtures, and then 36 the blank. So it's a bit of a win-lose situation. You'd win for 1 week and then you'd lose out the next week. So an even better demonstration of that is I can imagine a lot of people have got Leicester assets in there at the minute. A lot of them will be kept in for this week, and then I can imagine jumping off that boat in game week 36 because the fixtures for the rest of the season aren't easy either. So it makes sense to be ditching them for 36. So that's a good thing to bear in mind. And also you have the opposite of that. There's a lot of rearranged fixtures in 35 and 36 for teams that had games cancelled earlier in the season, as you can see by the top teams like your Aston Villas, your Evertons. So jumping onto those assets now is quite good, and you can kind of set and forget them for the rest of the season because they're always going to be playing every game week, and then you get the benefit this week of them doubling. So there's some teams we're going to target when we talk about this, especially trying to maximise those points, in which with what could be a potentially exciting game week, should we say, and hopefully most high scoring. So we'll jump into the fixtures, and just a reminder on the screen now, we've got the socials there you can follow to check us out, and if you've got any questions about your team, let's flick over to our normal fixtures page and we'll go from there. So let me flick them over. We'll flick to this screen. Right, so you can see all the fixtures here in front of us. So we need to bear in mind what we've just discussed on the previous page when we're going through these. So I'm going to, especially when I've got a double game week, I'm just going to go down to the next fixture and talk about both fixtures at the same time. It just makes more common sense. So we start with Leicester. As I mentioned, double game week for Leicester. So if you've got their assets in your team now, perfect. I'll be playing them all. Newcastle is a really good fixture. Less so with their other fixture, which is against Man United, but they've still got potential to score in that fixture. So the fact that they double and one of them's Newcastle, you should definitely be playing every asset in this. As I mentioned before, I wouldn't be transferring extra Leicester assets in. There's better places you could go for extra assets. But I think by this point, maybe an average of 2 assets your team's probably got from Leicester already, which definitely be playing them. Should be maximising the points in this in these 2 fixtures. Should be a nice little banker of points, we'd hope. So I'm imagining got an Iheanacho, Vardy, maybe a Maddison or a Leicester defender would be the most used ones currently. On the opposite side of that, Newcastle stay far away because they've not got a double and there's not much value in that. So go down to Leeds and Spurs. Neither of these have got a double game week. So it's a very similar issue with the Leicester, because I won't particularly want you to be transferring them in for this game week. Not a huge amount of value in there. I think it could be an exciting game with that as well, or it could be a 0-0 like we saw when Leeds played Man United. So it's not one I'd be banking on points from. Obviously, there'll be some. If you're getting a full team out, there's going to be the other people playing Bamford, Dallas, Kane, of course. They're always got potential of points. So you need to think sometimes. You don't always need to have that double game week player. There's no issue you playing Kane over like a cheaper double game week option. For example, if you if you bought in like a Benteke for Crystal Palace, which would be slightly differential, you've got to weigh up the value of him playing 2 fixtures. Kane could still either easily outscore in 1 fixture, so you need to bear that in mind when formulating your overall team. So single game week players should not be ignored, but I wouldn't be rushing in to transfer them in for this week when you've got better options around. So moving on from that, it gives us an interesting discussion about Crystal Palace, because I would argue Crystal Palace have probably got the best set of fixtures in terms of having a double game week. We're going to stay clear of Sheffield United completely and not even mention them. So Crystal Palace are playing away at Sheffield United and then away at Southampton, which I would say are pretty solid fixtures. The only thing that makes me slightly hesitant is that they're away, and I tend to think Crystal Palace, especially defensively, play better at home. But I feel like there's a good potential there. I mentioned Benteke before. I personally wouldn't recommend a Benteke. You've got obvious options in midfield of Zaha and Eze, who are very good options, especially because they have a fixture next week as well. I think when you're thinking about double game weekers and then having a single game week after, the 2 that scream out to me are Crystal Palace and Everton. Just the fact they've got some good mid-range assets who can return on their day, but it's just hoping they turn up for these 2 fixtures. A prime example of that is Zaha. You can score 2-3 goals 1 game week and then just go missing for the next 5. We've just got to hope that he turns up in these game weeks. It's just, you're playing a bit of luck, but then you're also put that bit of judgment and faith in the player, as you've always got to do a bit with FPL, and hope he turns up in the fixture and delivers. You'd hope there's a lot of potential in the Sheffield United fixture especially. But they're interesting options. I'd even be inclined to bring in a defender for them. You haven't got a huge goal scoring potential, but you could get 2 clean sheets in there. A Joel Ward, I think his 4.3 million is fantastic value. Especially at that price is unreal, and he's pretty much a guaranteed starter. Now I've said that, of course, he'll get rotated, but it's a good one to be going for. Crystal Palace. So as we just mentioned Everton, we'll go down to Everton at the same time. So Everton are playing West Ham away. Again, similar with the previous fixtures that we mentioned for Crystal Palace. Everton fixtures are both away, which gives me slight hesitation. But you also always know a DCL or a Digne, those two would be my top picks for Everton. Can always grab a goal assist, might even scrape a clean sheet for Digne's case. And I also like the shout of Sigurdsson in midfield because Rodriguez is a bit funny with injuries, and Sigurdsson seems to be that main creative player in there. It's either between him and Digne for set pieces, or Sigurdsson takes the penalties as well, which is another upside. The free kicks, it depends what angle it's from. But he's also an interesting option because he's in that mid-price bracket. I think it's about 7 million roughly, and it's a bit of an interesting option that not a lot of people expect to go for. So it could be interesting. There's also the cheaper defenders you could go for at Everton, such as Godfrey, which I'd probably say you're really relying on the clean sheets there. Apart from Digne, there's not a lot of attacking potential. You've got Coleman, but I'm not convinced he will play these two fixtures in such a close time frame, but could be proven wrong there. I know he's had some difficulties with injury. So you could go for a cheaper Everton option, which could still work in your defence if you don't want to go all out for Digne. But I'd be saying one in each position you've got there: Digne, Calvert-Lewin, and Sigurdsson. If you're looking for Everton assets in whatever position you've got free in your team, be good options, along with the Crystal Palace ones we discussed. So you've got Man City, Chelsea here. As I mentioned with Chelsea, I'm not particularly a fan of transferring anyone in for Chelsea because of the fixtures. Arsenal, you could argue, is a decent fixture, but if you haven't got Chelsea assets, I would be ignoring them. Man City, this stage in the season, I'd be ignoring them as well because how far they are in the Champions League. I think they need, is it just one win or even a draw to win the Premier League? So they're not going to be prioritising that at all. So I'd stay clear of this fixture and Chelsea below as well. So then we can move on to Liverpool. As I mentioned earlier, you need to bear in mind they could have a double game week. So if you get a fixture announcement in the next few days, we could take this a lot differently to how we would. But I'd still say at this point, Liverpool assets are a really good asset, bearing in mind they will have a double game week at some point. Well, yeah, they definitely will. It's basically confirmed they will have a double game week based on the postponed fixture that they had the other day with Man United. So I'd even be inclined to bring in Liverpool players without confirming a double game week. Got the standard options here, like Salah is the standout one. If they double game week, Salah is probably the standout captaincy option as well. Like personally, I don't have Salah, and I'll be looking to get him in. Especially if that double game week's confirmed, I'm just gonna have to make some sacrifice in the team to get in there because if it's West Brom and Southampton they're playing, that's just two good fixtures to kind of just gloss over and not think about getting famously one of the best FPL assets we've ever had. So I think Liverpool, whatever you've got at this point, I'd even considering getting the more players in, like I said. So Salah, Jota, Trent are the top three for me. You can go for a bit of a more bargain defender, but you're not going to get that attacking return potential with Trent, and I wouldn't really stray away from those three. If you've got the money for Trent, get him in there. Why not? And they've got good fixtures for the rest of the season, Liverpool as well, apart from the Man United fixture, but which could actually be easy depending on if United probably turning up. Quick note on Southampton as well, who also have a double game week and a single game week the week after. So Liverpool's quite a difficult fixture, but then Crystal Palace, you could argue there's some points return in there. So there is a bit of value in those Southampton assets. I'd argue a defender is probably the best way to go for a Southampton because you kind of bet in yourself. It depends which way a lot of it depends on how you expect this Southampton Crystal Palace fixture to go. Because if you get in a Zaha in, you might not want to get a Southampton defender. But I would say you could get your points from a Zaha in the Sheffield United fixture, and then also pick a Southampton defender like a Walker Peters, who could do you some solid points. So Southampton offer a bit of value. With Ings out, I don't value a lot of their attacking assets. But defensively, if you want a cheap replacement for someone who's injured, or just trying to maximise potential from the double game week, they're a good option to go for as well. Like I said, they play next week as well. So we'll move down to Wolves-Brighton, which is a bit of a funny one. Both teams can be a bit indifferent. If I was back in one, I'd probably go for Brighton because they seem to always create chances even if they don't score. But it's kind of a nothing fixture again. Don't be targeting this fixture to bring in players. If you've got the odd one in there and you want to play them, I've no issue with that. That game could really go in either way. Right, so we move down to Aston Villa against Man United. So both of these teams do double, which makes it quite interesting again. So for Aston Villa to start with, I think the main ones, again, defence for Aston Villa is not a bad place to start. I can imagine a lot of people have Martinez already. Great, keep him in there. But again, Villa's fixtures for the rest of the season are quite difficult, so I wouldn't be rushing to get them in. But if you've got an Ollie Watkins as well, that's perfect as well. I'd still be playing these players. I think Villa could score in both fixtures against United and Everton, as they're both at home as well. They don't seem to score a lot of goals, but if you've got a Watkins in your team, keep him in there. Again, don't be targeting to bring these players in, but if you've got them, definitely play them. You've got to take that bit of risk. Well, it's limiting the risk because you've got double game week anyway, so you may as well go for it there. So then on the other side of it, we've got Man United who are against Villa, and then they've also got Leicester down here, which I think are quite, even though it's double game week, and I can see a lot of people captaining Bruno, or even another asset, maybe even a Greenwood, but I wouldn't have a lot of confidence in that captaincy choice. I think the fixtures are quite difficult for United, and it depends if they're going to prioritise this competition, which I don't personally think they will. Especially the Aston Villa fixture, because they'll have played the Europa League on Thursday. Even though they're kind of guaranteed to be through, we've seen from Ollie that he loves to play Bruno in every fixture, even if they're already through, which seems a bit daft to me. But there's slightly difficult fixtures. Again, I wouldn't be bringing in extra players for this. Just bear in mind that United have got other commitments for the Europa, and they're pretty much complete. Well, not completely on the beach, but in terms of the league, but they are still trying the league. But I wouldn't be putting all my eggs into one basket. I'd probably be going more for like a West Ham or a Liverpool of actually trying to push for the top four rather than the United at this stage, and they've not got any other commitments. So United, obviously, if you've got a Bruno, he's a great captain to shout, but I wouldn't be bringing in any other players there. So we move to West Ham, Everton. As I just mentioned with West Ham, they've got something to play for. They seem, well, they're hopefully getting their players back. Saw Antonio score 2 last night. Cresswell's also back. I think Rice is close to being back. So they're kind of getting back to full fitness, and they really needed it if they're going to keep pushing on. So I quite like West Ham for the rest of the season because they're always going to be fighting for the points. So I'll probably back them in this Everton fixture to get a good result. But then again, you're also weighing up the fact that Everton can score. They could arguably keep a clean sheet. I think it'll be quite difficult for them to keep a clean sheet, and Everton have got a double as well. So again, West Ham assets, if you've got them, they're kind of a set and forget for the rest of the season. Don't bring any more in for this set of fixtures. Down the line in the next few weeks, you might want to bring in a few, but not for this fixture. We've just discussed Everton previously, so Everton offer great value for I'd argue, probably the best value assets alongside Crystal Palace for this game week, especially because they're in that mid-price range as well. You got a lot of benefit to gain from there. Right, so we're going to move on to Arsenal against West Brom, which I think, again, you're going to have Arsenal with Europa League commitments, and especially because of the result in the first leg, Arsenal are going to have to play their best team on the Thursday night, compared to United, who you could argue can rest a few players because they won 6-2. Arsenal have got to come back. So, again, if the fixtures were the other way around and they were playing Chelsea here and then West Brom later on, I'd be more inclined to promote Arsenal assets. But the fact they've got a double game week doesn't really entice me into them because of that Europa League, and next week they don't play. So Arsenal are not for me. West Brom, no either. They'll probably get relegated in this week as well, so they've got nothing to play for after that. So don't be going for West Brom at all there either. So we've got Fulham and Burnley here again, which again could relegate Fulham this week. Fulham, I think they're a decent side, they just can't always get the end product right. So I do like them as a side. I don't expect them to get fully thrashed here. It could be quite even game. Chris Wood seems to be on good form at the minute. But again, I wouldn't be bringing in players in. The cheap bracket that we've talked about, kind of your Palace and your Everton, you can easily fulfil that rather than going there this fixture. No value here for me. And then all these fixtures we discussed earlier as we were talking about double game weeks. So I think it's clear from what I've been talking about as we've been going through that I see Crystal Palace, Everton as great middle value options to be trying to target this week because they've got a double and they also have a fixture next week, which like you won't have headaches next week when it comes to that either. So if you're looking at transfers this week, I would be prioritising those teams and also bear in mind Liverpool. Look for announcements later in the week if they're going to have a double game week later on. Because if you've not got three Liverpool assets, that just enhances the value of their assets like threefold. So as I mentioned, as it's double game week and United have a double game week, I can imagine Bruno will be up there as one of the most top captaincy picks based on these fixtures. If Liverpool get that double game week, Salah is going to jump like above Bruno quite easily, I expect, based on how easy the fixtures could be. But outside of those two, which are obviously the two big guns, I won't be captaining Kane because he's only got one fixture. And if we flick back to the fixtures on here, you can see Chelsea I'd be avoiding. Leicester's a slight shout, I'd say, because that Newcastle fixture is quite good. I've no issue with your captain Iheanacho. He'd probably be the third best option out of those. So I think I'd call them like the top six teams. So out of the top six teams, Liverpool, United, Leicester for a captaincy option because they've all got doubles. I'd probably even recommend Salah slightly if he had a single game week, but definitely if he has a good double. And if you're going for a differential, these two that I've mentioned already, Crystal Palace and Everton, I think if you're looking at these teams that have a double and then a single game week, you look at the fixtures. Southampton's are slightly more difficult because they've got Liverpool in there. Aston Villa's are probably the most difficult. So I'd be looking at them, Crystal Palace and Everton. And if you look at Everton as well, they've got a decent fixture afterwards, which hopefully gets some more points in there. So that could slightly sway you more towards Everton. So the assets we mentioned before, like a Zaha, would be a great captaincy shout. Differential, if it pays off, it'll go very well for you. And then Everton, you've got the DCL, even the Sigurdsson or Digne captaincy shout there. But it's got the makings of being a very exciting game week. I'm looking forward to see how everyone shuffles between the 35 and the 36. And as I keep mentioning, make sure you keep an eye out for that Liverpool announcement because it's going to have a big shift to your transfer plans. And as I said, this is point in time on the Tuesday, the 4th that we're on in the evening. So it's not confirmed either way what's happening with that. Hopefully we get news before the game week deadline. But keep an eye out for that. And we'll keep an eye out on that on Twitter as well. If you follow me on Twitter, we'll keep an eye on that fixture and over on Twitch as well, as we mentioned on the last screen. But yeah, that is us for this game week, guys. Hope you enjoyed. And if you've got any questions, drop it in the comments. As I mentioned earlier, if you enjoy the content, please like it and subscribe. Both are free to do. And I'd really appreciate it. And we will probably see you next week. And everyone, good luck with this week. I'm sure it'll be a fun one, however it goes. I'll see you on the next one.